that will cook.
Oh, it's a great day to be alive, folks. Smallpox is no more, the popularity of the bidet is rising across North America, and today we're doing a bacon extravaganza. 3 extravaganzas to be precise, all with homemade bacon that I'm going to show you how to make without any high-tech equipment necessary. The first is in sandwich form, the second is in pancake form, and the third, some pretentious nonsense. Let's get started with the bacon. We're gonna turn this into this. I am a Canadian. Sorry. And I am making bacon. But this does not make this Canadian bacon. Rather, bacon made by a Canadian. If I was using the loin of the pig, then I would be making Canadian bacon. Although anyone, regardless of which patch of dirt they happened to fall out onto when they became alive, could make Canadian bacon, they just might not be a Canadian making Canadian bacon. I hope this clears up any confusion you probably didn't have until just now. Sorry. Remove the skin, leaving as much fat as you can. This was, I admit, a bit of a hack and slash job, as you can see. But what do you want? I'm not a professional. I'm just the guy who likes to mess around, you know what I mean? Because I live in an apartment in a city, I have to use the pink curing salt and liquid smoke method in order to turn this pork belly into bacon. I have to do this because, aside from the substantial fines and frowny faces I would be subject to on social media were I to go playing lumberjack in my local park, in order to get the wood to properly smoke this pig meat, city trees, much like city pigeons, undergo a significant transformation whereby the ordinarily nourishing innards end up tasting like car exhaust and give you parasites. Anyway, as we covered in the corned beef video, the winning formula for this method of curing is to use 0.25% of the meat's weight in pink curing salt, 2.25% of the meat's weight in regular salt, amount of brown sugar for balance, especially for this as pig meat plays really well with sweetness. Then top up with grade A sink water and stir to combine. Then, importantly, because of the aforementioned tree situation, add in some liquid smoke. I used a 103 milliliter bottle of hickory smoke and that seemed to do just fine. Then precisely place your pig meat in a plastic pouch and pour in your pork potion, making sure the meat is fully submerged, and seal its fate. Then remove from the receptacle and rinse off any remaining residue. Pat dry and transfer your almost bacon to a foil-lined sheet pan. Cover it up and bake at 225 degrees Fahrenheit for about 2 hours or until the internal temperature registers between 140 and 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Save those juices that have rendered out during the bacon's cook time, as you can use them, repurpose them to infuse other foods with the magic of bacon. In my case, I'm actually going to use this jus to make the bread that I'm going to use for my bacon sandwich. As you can see, there wasn't quite enough, so I topped it off with some milk. This both gave me enough liquid and reduced the temperature of the jus to about 98 degrees Fahrenheit, which is the ideal temperature for yeasts to come alive. Then, with all the precision of a drunken diver with vertigo, I added in some brown sugar to counteract the saltiness of the jus, which could actually end up inhibiting the growth of the yeasts. Then simply add in your yeasts and stir around to dissolve and wait for them to come alive. Add 4 cups of all-purpose flour to a bowl and pour in your bloomed yeast mixture and stir until you get a loose dough. Kneading is necessary to combine everything. Then simply cover with a towel and let it proof for about an hour and a half or so, maybe 2. While your bread is proofing, you can make the bacon bits. First, dice up a block of bacon and then fry it in a pan on medium heat until well browned and most of the fat has rendered out. Then strain the grease into a heat-proof container and save it for later. Then pour back a small amount of your reserved bacon grease and toss in a diced onion. Fry on a medium-high heat until you get some nice char. This is going to perfume our bread. And then pour back onto the bacon bits. Now, to make our bread truly worthy of housing our homemade bacon sandwich, we're going to fold in some aioli into the dough. This will give it a much more luxurious texture, kind of like a redneck focaccia. But in this aioli, instead of drizzling in a neutral oil, we're going to use the reserved bacon fat. I personally believe this is what was revealed when Pandora opened her fabled box. This is actually the second proof. I forgot to film the first one, but rest assured, that's why you can see the beginnings of some nice little gluten webs forming. This will yield a satisfying chew to our bread, and we're going to need that added structure because when we fold in the aioli, the dough will become noticeably looser and stickier. Fun fact, the bacon mayo will be solid at a fridge temperature because, well, bacon grease is solid at a fridge temperature. So, if you want to try this, you may want to let it sit outside the fridge for a little while to soften up, but I mean, I just went ahead and used my twin powers of ignorance and will to stir it in. Then let it proof once more for the aioli to fully incorporate into the dough, and then stir in your bacon onion mixture. Let it rise one more time, and then stick it in the fridge overnight for a nice, long, cold rise. In the morning, deflate and fold one last time, and let it rest for about 30 minutes or so, allowing it to approach room temperature. Just enough time for you to preheat a Dutch oven to 200 degrees Celsius or 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Drop in your dough and do your best to score this sticky mess that resembles cookie dough. Bake with the lid on at 420 degrees Fahrenheit or 210 Celsius for 30 minutes. Then take it out, remove the lid, stick it back in, and bake for an additional 15 minutes to get a nice, deeply golden brown crust. Rest your loaf on a wire rack for about an hour or until it's no longer hot to the touch. As you can see, some of the bacon bits on the outside of the dough burnt a little, so, do your best to keep them on the inside of the dough when you're folding it and about to bake it. But I make these mistakes so you don't have to. Regardless, it turned out pretty nice. If I didn't know any better, I'd think it was raisin bread and throw it away. To assemble the sandwich, I slathered on a layer of garlic aioli I had left over from a previous video, followed by a layer of the Gordon Ramsay style slow scrambled eggs, which we covered in a previous video, but I'll speed through it now. Simply stir your eggs for a long time with some butter until they thicken. Very easy, only thing required is patience and determination. Then add a layer of arugula for some peppery bite along with some picturesque strips of your homemade bacon and dust with some freshly cracked pepper. I also added off camera for some reason a few shakes of Frank's Red Hot for some sharpness and acidity. Okay, so here's the alternate version to the classic BLT, which stands for bacon, lettuce, tomato. This one is more of a BAE because it's bacon, egg, arugula, aioli, Frank's Red Hot. I'm just gonna eat the whole thing.
This is blowing my mind.
If you are a missionary and you're in the business of converting people, give them this first. They're yours. Forever. For the second bacon extravaganza, I'll be exploring its sweeter side by making a bacon and banana infused pancake that's then going to be topped with strips of maple syrup infused bacon. For the pancake batter, mix your dry ingredients, pictured here, together and whisk to combine. Then add in your wet ingredients. And here, once again, we see the inherent perils of sacrificing practicality for visual aesthetics. For in trying to get this cutesy overhead shot, the melted butter sat on the cold floor for too long and coagulated in the milk, as can be seen here. I ended up turning down the volume for the sake of some of the more delicate viewers, but rest assured this mistake on my part resulted in some colorful language. You want to mix your batter until it just comes together, but still lumpy, and rest in the fridge for about 30 minutes. While your dough's chillin', you should cut up a banana into little bite-sized pieces and then toss them into your batter along with a generous amount of your homemade bacon bits and stir until it just comes together. Keep those lumps. For the maple bacon, fry up some strips until they're lightly cooked. Then pat them dry, coat them with maple syrup, and let them sit in a low oven until the syrup has dehydrated a bit and adheres to the bacon. Then pour in some more bacon grease into a frying pan and heat it up until shimmering and a few wisps of steam start to rise. Then plop in a spoonful or two of your batter. Mine was a little bit runnier than I would have liked it to be, most likely a result of the butter fiasco from before. Either way, it ended up being all right in the end, as you can see from this little flippity flip. Then simply transfer to a plate and top with some chopped bananas. I went with a stacking campfire logs approach for my bananas and then switched to a more linoleum tiled floor look. Then I stacked on my maple bacon. Don't mind the white spots, it's only some congealed bacon fat. Still good, still good. Okay, now let's taste this second bacon. Do it again. Okay, bacon experience number 2. If you knock on my door and you have a message and you give me this, you're the dear leader, I'll follow you to whatever end. I'll give you my SIN, my PIN, all with a greasy, stupid grin. Oh, okay, now for the trickiest and stupidest extravaganza of them all. Since the first one was more of a truck stop diner classic and the second was something you might find on a kid's menu next to a recently signed joint custody agreement, I wanted this third extravaganza to not only contrast the previous two, but to truly hold itself to this most ancient and holy ideals of the extravaganza. Take a russet potato and using a vegetable peeler, do your best to peel off long, thin strands of potato and then submerge them in cold, fresh sink water to remove the excess starch and prevent them from oxidizing and turning gray. It gets harder and harder as the potato gets smaller and smaller and the ends get more and more acute. Shout out to 3rd grade math. My strands got less even and less long as time went on, but that's all right. There are no mistakes, merely opportunities for adaptation. Hooray. After you've peeled off exactly 5 decimeters of potato and exposed the potato's dense and inedible core, fill a pot with 1 quart of water and drop in the potato and cook until fork tender. Then strip off a good amount of thyme leaves and place them in a bowl, followed by some rosemary leaves. Chop them up nice and tiny, and then grate in some Parmesan. Some freshly cracked pepper, a glug or 2 of olive oil to bind it together. I felt like it needed something more, so I grated in a small amount of lemon zest to amp up the herby freshness, followed by an off-camera grated garlic clove to give the Parmesan a little more support and give the whole thing a little more earthiness. Then pat dry and lay out your potato peelies and dab on some strategically placed herb mixtures. Then lay on some of your bacon strips and roll it up. Repeat this process, adding more volume and mass to your rolly thing until it can sit comfortably in a ramekin. Next, chop off the heads of some jalapenos and remove the core with all of its seeds and ribs, leaving a spicy, stuffable shell. Then coat them with oil and bake at 200°C, 400°F until cooked through and the skins are blackened and loosely clinging to the flesh. For the filling, mash up your boiled potato core and mix in 2 hard-boiled egg yolks. Dice a few of your cooked jalapenos and add them to the mix. Then stir in some bacon bits and grope your mixture until homogeneous. Let your peppers cool and then stuff them with your mixture. Set your oven to a nice low heat around 275 or 137.5 C, shout out to 3rd grade math, so that your bacon fat has time to render out and effectively deep fry the potato peely thing to give you a nice potato chip crispy texture. I sat up my peppers in a ramekin so they didn't leak their precious filling all over my heirloom aluminum foil. After about 20 minutes, the peppers were done, but the roly thing needed some more time. Now, because this extravaganza is supposed to be extra fancy, I needed some sauce to smear on the plate. So I made a bacon bechamel by combining equal parts flour and bacon grease, and cooked until I got a nice blonde roux, stirring constantly to avoid burning the flour. While this was happening, I had a milk and cream mixture keeping warm on a low burner off camera. Then I mixed it in until thick. For seasoning, I added in some freshly grated nutmeg, a pinch of cayenne, salt, and black pepper. For some next level snobbery, I decided to make a maple coffee jelly. If you ever feel the need to do this, simply hydrate a few gelatin sheets in cold water, then retrieve your delightfully soggy, goopy gelatin and stir it into some warm coffee and maple syrup. Okay, here we go for the fancy stuff. First, I'm gonna eat the roulette.
It's astonishing.
This was a success. Let me try the stuffed pepper. Wildly successful. I'm gonna try the coffee jelly.
Which is just so silly.
But it's amazing. This is very simple, like little dessert. The eclecticism of mouth stimulation has rendered me susceptible to even the most stupidly obvious of multi-level marketing scams.
As well as any religious feely-good club.
Well, that's it. For the rest of my day, that is, as those 3 extravaganzas are soon to be forcibly ejected back into the outer world. And as always, do what you love because nobody cares and it doesn't matter.